All right. Well, hey, good morning. Once again, welcome to church. My name's Craig, and man, thanks for sharing that moment with me. What a cool moment as a parent to have just some of your best friends and your family on stage to dedicate your child to God. That was amazingly powerful. So honored to be with you today. In fact, your very presence indicates a few things. Maybe you're here and you're here for the very first time. And if that's the case, whether you were invited by a friend, possibly you drove by and saw the building and you just felt compelled to come in. We're hearing more and more of that story, which is amazing. Or maybe you're here celebrating alongside one of the families that got dedicated. Whatever the reason may be, I just want to let you know that we understand attending a new church for the first time can be a little uneasy and sometimes an intimidating experience. So glad that you pushed through the nerves and the awkwardness to worship with us today. Secondly, the fact that you are here means that you survived our Consciously Countercultural series. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. You made it. You are a picture of endurance and perseverance and probably picked up some cuts and some bruises along the way. So we're going to do something today that we don't normally do at our church, and that's to talk about something not offensive. So starting today, we begin a 3-week series on politics. Something we can all agree on, right? No, I told the staff after that series, man, I think for the next just year, the universe is love, God is love, good vibes for everyone. I'm not sure my heart could quite handle it. But in all seriousness, we are beginning a new series today entitled, It's Just a Phase. And I genuinely believe that this series has the potential to be an absolute game changer for some people in our church. Because for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking around this idea of family. And what a polarizing word, right? For some of us, when we hear the word family, it conjures up feelings and emotions, feelings of safety, security, consistency, solidarity, protection, shelter. But for others of us, family is an F word, right? It's a place where, unfortunately, your greatest wounds, your deepest betrayals all came at the hands of your family. And so the goal over this series is to redeem the concept of family, to build stronger families, because I believe that healthy families are built from the top down, not from the bottom up. Meaning that if you're to put a healthy child with 2 or 1 unhealthy parents, eventually that child will become unhealthy. But the inverse principle is also true. If you're to put an unhealthy child with a healthy parent, what do you want to bet? That child begins to move towards a life of health, because a healthy family always starts at the top. So this series is that we want to strengthen the top, strengthen the parents, whether those are biological, step, surrogate, or spiritual. And that's the goal that we're going to pursue over these next 3 weeks. And before anyone zones out, I want to make it abundantly clear that this series is for everyone. So regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, maybe you have kids, maybe you don't have kids yet, maybe you don't even have an intention to have any kids, and that's fine as well. But I know this, regardless of who you are, we all have children in our lives that we care about. Maybe those are nieces or nephews. Maybe they're kids that on the baseball team that you coach. Maybe for you, they're children at this church that you mentor and disciple. So if we care about the future of those children, if we want to impact their lives, there is one thing necessary in order to do that. And that's something known as influence. And here's what we have to understand when it comes to influence, that your best chance to have influence in someone's life, you want to know how you do it? It's simply by showing up. You've got to show up. But here's the problem. Even though showing up is easily the most effective way to gain influence in the life of a child or a teenager, This type of influence provides no instant gratification. We never see the immediate results. Because think with me for just a moment about the decisions that you make in just any given day, and really what drives the motive behind those decisions. So the decision to look at my phone instead of focus on work. The decision to eat the unhealthy hamburger as opposed to the healthy salad. Which, by the way, the fact they put a Five Guys at Nolan and 70 may reduce my overall lifespan by about 5 years. Not good for me. The decision to sleep in as opposed to going to the gym. Why do we make these decisions? Easy. They provide for us immediate gratification, instant satisfaction. Influence with our kids doesn't work this way. Guys, a toddler is never going to thank you for potty training them, for disciplining them, or feeding them. Heck, I've been feeding Wally for 7 months, and he's never thanked me once, that little jerk. Now, granted, he can't talk yet, but that's an irrelevant detail for this point. And I hate to tell you, like, a middle schooler, it's not gonna be much different. Now, they may mumble under their breath, "Thanks, Dad," after you buy them the ridiculously expensive shoes. But they're never taking you out for coffee and saying, "You know, Mom, you have been such a strategic influence in my life. Like, the overall trajectory of my future has been drastically changed because of your relational currency. You're just the best." Like, it's never going to happen. But we need to understand this. The best kind of influence, it's always personal. Always personal. And this was so much the methodology of Jesus. That's why he told Zacchaeus, "Hey, today I'm coming to your house." That's why when it came to Peter, Andrew, and James, he says, "I'm gonna teach you how to fish for people." It's why when we look at the life and the ministry of Jesus throughout the Gospels, the majority of his time was not spent teaching to the masses or investing into the crowds. It was spent discipling the 12. He was earning a different type of influence. Because today I think there's a lot of confusion when it comes to this ambiguous, kind of nebulous concept of influence. For some of us, we think that if I have power, well, then I have influence. And you know what? That may work with a 3-year-old. Because you can literally make a 3-year-old do whatever you want them to do. You have physical power and positional power over their lives. But can I let you in on a little secret? That 3-year-old won't stay a 3-year-old forever. And if you continue to lead, if you continue to influence that way as they get older, not only will it be ineffective, they will vehemently reject you. Some of us get confused and we think, well, if I have success, then certainly I have influence. Maybe for you, you carry quite a bit of credibility outside of your home. Who knows, maybe you're a consultant and people pay you lots of money to give them your brilliant ideas. Maybe you're powerful. Maybe you're the lead of the sales team. Maybe you're the manager. Maybe you're the boss. And when you speak, man, everyone listens. Well, that is except for your 16-year-old daughter. Because she's not impressed by your success. She's unimpressed by the number of employees who answer to you. And even though you tell her ad nauseum over and over and over again that she should listen to you because you know what you're talking about and you're really smart, she never will until you show up and meet her in a way where your influence can transfer and impact her life. And these are just a few of the ways that we gain influence. We can gain influence through power. We can attempt to gain influence through success, or we can gain influence through the trust of someone. And the first two, they're cheap, they're common, they're easy, they're temporary. But the third, the type of influence gained through trust, that's the type that you have to earn. Here's what I want us to get this morning, that lasting influence, real influence, meaningful influence, it always has to be earned. You want to influence your son's life, your niece's life, your stepdaughter's life, then you're going to have to show up and you're going to have to earn it. There was a guy in the Bible by the name of Nehemiah. Some of you may know his story. And I think for me, what I find so intriguing about Nehemiah is that sometimes we tell biblical stories and they get lost in translation because we tell a story of a spiritual leader, which for me makes sense because that's kind of what I get paid to do. But when you're sitting out there, you think, well, that's great, but I'm not that person. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a priest. I'm not a prophet. And that's what I love about Nehemiah. He was none of those things. He wasn't a spiritual leader. Probably our closest comparison is that he was like a politician or a successful businessman. And what put Nehemiah on the map is that he led the charge of rebuilding the wall around the city of Jerusalem. And this wall was very important. It represented stability. It represented protection and ultimately strength for that city. But if you've ever been a part of any construction project, if you've ever had the blessing of being a part of one, you know that there are a lot of problems that come alongside. And Nehemiah and the Israelites, man, they were no exception. At one point, they had entered into this pivotal juncture in the construction process. They were about halfway through with the project, and everything started to unravel. Have you ever had a home project like that? Right, so hey, can I just speak to the wives in the house for a second? Just because some attractive man on HDTV did something, that does not mean your husbands can do it, okay? We will try, okay? We'll go out to Lowe's and buy the tool belt. We will think we look good wearing the tool belt. But for some of us, myself falling into this category, we sometimes will take one problem and we have the supernatural ability of magnifying it into 50 new problems. And that's what it felt like at this particular point with Nehemiah. Everything was starting to come undone. They had made this amazing progress, but now the excitement of the people was gone. The newness of the project had left. People were tired and discouraged, and the onslaught of problems felt unending. First, it was the verbal attacks. Then it was the threats. Then the complaints. Then the rumors. Then the lies. Then the spotty Wi-Fi. I mean, you name it. Anything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Nehemiah noticed that the morale of the people started to shift. Their enemies literally were waiting outside of the city, intimidating them. Fear set into the people, and they began to panic. And this is what great leaders do. It's actually only in moments of great opposition does great leadership thrive. And he did something that I believe was just absolutely brilliant. It was God-inspired genius. In the midst of this turning point, it was a crossroad moments in the history of their people. Nehemiah decides to call the families and the parents to a new level of responsibility. He describes the scene like this, Nehemiah 4, verse 13. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. And don't miss this last part. Fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. Man, could you imagine the emotion in this moment? Everyone knows that there is this imminent attack. The enemy at any moment could make their move. The people are discouraged. They're afraid. And how does Nehemiah respond? By gathering the families in the gaps of the walls and simply says, hey, remember what you're fighting for. It's a powerful phrase. Remember what you're fighting for. And this is the moment that everything changed. In this single move, Nehemiah reshifted the focus of the Israelites. No longer was their focus on the broken, dilapidated wall. No longer was their focus on the enemy outside the gates. Now their sole and laser focus was that we will do anything to defend our sons, our daughters, and our homes. And what happens next in the story, I think, is so fascinating. That when the parents stood in the gaps, the enemy decided not to attack. Did you catch that? Man, that's important. And when the parents stood in the gaps, the enemy decided not to attack. And I wonder why that is. I wonder if it has something to do with the realization the enemy had that we dads, moms, we fight differently when we're reminded of what we're fighting for. We fight differently when we see what's at stake if the battle's lost. For those of you who know the story, the wall went on to be completed. And for a few generations, the Israelites thrived and many lives were saved. And why? It's because the parents showed up. So what does that look like for us? Like really, what does it look like for us as parents, spiritual parents, surrogate parents, influencers, mentors, disciplers? What does it look like for us to show up? What does it look like for us to stand in the gaps for our kids? Because the answer may surprise you, because for me, I believe it starts with a realization that we must understand which phase of life our children are in. Because if we don't understand the phase, you could work really hard at this parenting thing. You could give it everything you have, but if you neglect to understand the phase, you'll never earn the influence necessary to make a difference. And that's easier said than done, isn't it? Because I don't know about you, I don't remember what it's like to be a preschooler. I don't remember throwing the fits and having to take naps. I don't remember the look of frustration on my parents' face when I, for free, pro bono, put artwork on their walls. Didn't charge them. I barely remember elementary school. It was so long ago. How quick we are to forget the comparison crisis that hits a child right around the second grade. And their gender differences become glaringly apparent, and we just naturally, intuitively kind of flock to that which is most like us. I do remember in 5th grade, I got my first real crush on a girl. This was also the season of my life where I had to start buying my jeans from the Husky section at Walmart. It was a very dark season in the life of your pastor. It's kind of scary to remember what it was like in middle school, huh? That's freaky. And this is why phase is so important. For example, did you know, this is unlike most things that I tell you, this is not made up, this is real. In the life of a middle schooler, they will lose around 1/3 of their cerebral cortex through a process called pruning. That's real. And so maybe for you, you recently yelled at your middle schooler and you said something along the lines of how do you not know that? Didn't they teach you that in elementary school? And the answer is probably, yes, they did, but they really don't know. And it's not that they're being irresponsible. They're literally losing their minds. So middle schoolers, I hope you're paying attention. I have just gave you the most amazing excuse. When you forget your homework or to do chores, the whole cerebral cortex is acting up. What do you do? What about high school, y'all? For some of you, high school was cruising Nolan every Friday and Saturday night. Hey, by show of hands, any of you guys cruise Nolan? Where are you at? So awesome. I'm so sad that I missed that time in my life. I cruise Nolan every day, but it's just because I take Nolan Road, drive home to my house. Not near as fun. Cruising Nolan. And I did a little research about this phenomenon known as cruising Nolan. It wasn't just about cruising Nolan. It was also about hanging out in the Ventures parking lot. Remember Ventures? I'm guessing a lot of you made some really bad decisions. In fact, our youth group might be quite a bit larger because of the old Ventures parking lot. I'm just gonna leave it right there. Inappropriate, moving on. But here's the deal. Here's the mistake that we make as parents of high schoolers. We assume that our kids' high school experience will be the same as ours. And that is laughable. High schoolers today are living in an unprecedented era of technology and connectedness through social media. There once was a day where you could get bullied in school, you could get bullied on maybe your walk home or on the bus, but now you can get bullied 24/7, mercilessly, relentless. We'll never know what it's like as parents to live in a world where someone can ruin your reputation, they can start a rumor about you, and it can be spread to literally thousands of people within minutes. And we want to think that we can empathize. We want to think that we know what it's like, but until you've experienced it, you can't, and that's something we just never will. So I don't walk you through all these different phases to discourage you or to overwhelm you, but to simply highlight the importance that for us, man, we have to meet kids where they're at personally so that we can impact them relationally. Because for most of us, when we hear the term phase, have you noticed how it's always presented within a negative context? It's like, don't worry. I know it's bad now. I know your kid's like foaming at the mouth and you're convinced they're the spawn of Satan. I know that you're tired. I know they're rebellious. It's just a phase. Put your head down, survive, trudge through it, keep going. And for us, we flip that concept up on its head. And we define phase as this. A phase is a time frame in a kid's life. A time frame, a window. It's this big. Will be gone before you know it. A time frame in a kid's life when you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence a child's future. Here's the deal, guys. From the time that a kid is born to the moment they turn 18 years old, and they legally become adult and they start to move on to whatever is next for them, we have 936 weeks. These 936 marbles is a visual representation of your window of influence. And it's so funny to me, the power of perspective. Because for some of us, when you hear that number, you immediately think it's so much time. Especially for those of us parents in a phase of parenting we don't particularly love. Man, the first 6 months of Wally's life seemed unending. Wouldn't sleep, was exhausted, beat down, tired, surviving. But then I started to do the math, and I don't consider myself much of a crier, but I've been crying a lot lately for some reason. Pray for me. I think I'm going through menopause. Oh, is that not how that works? Okay. So stupid. I can't believe I said that. I did the math this week. I've got 385 marbles left with Liam. Almost 2/3 are already gone. That hit me. 557 with Olive. So when we say it's just a phase, like it's not just the catchy series title, it's a pleading. It's an imploring. There's a window of influence in your child's life, and if you miss it, if you blink, if you get distracted, it's going to be gone. Man, that happened fast. There are seasons, there are stages that are gone, and I'll never get those back. So what we're going to do for the next 3 weeks as a church is we're going to just partner with you. And we're going to help us realize, hey, practically speaking, this is what it looks like to engage throughout these different phases. This is what it looks like to step in, to lean in, and to gain influence. And you know what? For some of you, this is going to be really hard because you've made certain statements your entire life. Like, hey, this is the way that my parents parented me, so now I'm going to parent this way. And I'm just going to let you know it's not going to work. Or this is the way that we've always done it. And so, hey, we're living in a world that we've never seen before. So it's going to require the ability to be a little fluid and flexible and not fall in love with the method, but be married to the mission of raising up kids in Christ's likeness. As we close this morning, there's just two things that I want to ask you to do. The first is simply this. As you leave today, on your way out, our ushers are going to hand each of you a marble. And I have a homework assignment, a challenge for you. I want you to carry that marble in your pocket all week long. And yes, I understand for those of us who rock the skinny jeans, this might be a painful exercise, okay? Thigh bruises for days, that's okay. It's the price we pay. But carry that marble with you. Maybe just put it somewhere that you can see it multiple times a day. And every time you see that marble, every time you feel that marble in your pocket, I want that to be a reminder for you to show up. Don't tune out. Show up. You want to know the most radical move of displaying love for your kid? You want to know what you can do today? Just put it down. Wrestle with your kids. Even if they're at the age where it's awkward and their husbands think it's really weird, you were there first. You were there first. How about this? Say, hey, how's your heart? What's going on in here? Let's talk about that for a second. Listen, I know you're tired. I know that there's a lot of other things going on. I know that you have a lot of stress in your life. I know that things are hard at work or at home. But see, here's how you know what the most important title is. The most important title in my life is not pastor of Church in the Four Corners. And you know how I know that? Is because one day someone else will have that title. But I'm Liam's dad. And I'm Olive's dad, and Wally's dad, and Laura's husband. So that's my title. And no one else can fill that role. So I need to step up, and I need to show up in their life. So what would it look like for you just this week to show up in a major way for your kids? And secondly, I want to ask all of you to prayerfully consider showing up for the kids at this church. If you include the amazing youth ministry that takes place here on Wednesday nights, we see just shy of about 400 kids come through our doors on a weekly basis. It's an amazing number when you stop and think about it. It's a lot of influence to have with this next generation. And I think we have the best leaders, the best crew. I think we have world-class ministry that happens for these kids. I asked Tanya, give me a number, and she said, we need about 80 people to step up to carry the weight. From 6 weeks old to young adults, we need about 80 people who would show up and stand in the gap for our kids. It was actually last Sunday, I was out in the lobby after third service, and y'all's kids go crazy in the lobby after third service. I know because those are my kids out there as well. And someone kind of looked at me and they're like, kind of gave me this look like, are you gonna address this issue of the kids being crazy? It's like, no. Let them run. What's the alternative? To make church boring? I was talking to a guy between second and third service, and he visited for the first time. He's in service right now, attended last service, and he said, I went to pick my daughter up from Blue Room, and she said, nope. Church, she said, church was too short. I'm gonna attend again. So he's just here for the second time. Sorry, my sermon's not much different, but wow, think about that. So many of us grow up being drugged to church, and now we gotta drag our kids out of the church. That's the kind of church we wanna plant, amen? But we can never do that until some people step up and show up for our kids. And I don't know where you fall on this journey. If I can say a hard statement, maybe for you is first go around, you weren't the most proud parent. You missed some opportunities, you zoned out. But you know what? That doesn't mean you can't leave a spiritual legacy in the life of a child. God's not done with you. Maybe you did a phenomenal job parenting. Maybe you're in this season of empty nesters, but there's just kind of that itch. You kind of miss it. Man, get on your knees and play with some 2-year-olds. It will freak you out, and you will love it when some strange kid that you didn't even know a month ago comes up and hugs your leg in the middle of the lobby. It will mess with you when a single mom comes up and said, hey, you're the only godly man in my son's life. Thank you for investing in him. That will mess with you. It will mess with you when you step up and you've got a middle school boy talking to you about bullying to the point where he wants to end his own life, and you can walk him out of that. That will mess you up. And will help you see that God can use you in ways that you wouldn't even imagine. But it only happens when the parents, they stand in the gaps of the walls. That's when the city's fortified. That's when it's strengthened. Maybe for you, you don't have kids. Maybe kids freak you out. Maybe your wife is gonna use this as a manipulative way of tricking you into having kids. I don't know. But I do know this, we need some people to stand up. Wherever you're at, it's just a phase in these guys' lives. You know, James, he describes life as a mist that appears for a moment and then it vanishes. I think it's the same with just our children's phases. They're there for an instant. Don't blink, don't miss it. Would you pray with me? Father, we just thank you that you are a good, loving, generous, benevolent God. We thank you that you are so many things, but today the word patient just comes to my heart. You're a patient Father. When we mess up, when we fall, when we blow it, when we actively sin against you, you're just patient. You just wait with us, your mercy new every day, your grace unending, you're just patient. And we thank you for your patience, God. We thank you that when you see us as what you know we can be, not for even what we are. You see us through the righteousness of Christ. You don't see us through our own flaws and sin. And I pray that we would be so willing as parents to extend that same grace to our kids. So Father, I pray over every parent in the room, biological step, spiritual. I pray over every parent, every mentor, every big brother, big sister. God, maybe some of them are tired. Maybe they're at the end of their rope. Maybe they've just consented to zoning out. God, I pray they would show up. that they would shake loose whatever it is, that they would engage, that they would get on the ground, that they would once again embark on the arduous, difficult, but yet life-giving journey of parenting. I pray that we could lean into every phase and we could just drink it so deeply. Pray we would not miss it, God. Secondly, I pray over those in the room that, God, right now you're just tapping them on the shoulder. Right now you're saying, it's your time. You've been sitting, you've been the beneficiary of what's happening here, and now it's time to move from consumer to contributor. Now it's time for you to show up. That's the word, God, I believe you're speaking over countless people in this room. And Father, I pray that they would have the courage immediately after service to go to the table in our lobby, right outside that door. And I pray they would do something about it through this series. I pray they would be a difference maker. I pray they would push past complacency. I pray that convenience would not be the defining factor of their life. Convenience inspires no one. Convenience leaves no legacy. Because influence has to be earned, and it can only be earned up close. So I pray that we would show up for these kids. And lastly, God, I pray for every spiritual orphan in this room. For those who are living outside of the family of God. You say in Romans 8:15 that God, you've not given us a spirit that leads us to fear, but yet you gave us the spirit of sonship, and it's by him we cry out, Abba. It's that spirit of sonship we cry out, Dad. That we as followers of Christ have been adopted into your family. What a beautiful realization that is, that none of us could ever have that heritage. It was only granted and given. I pray for those that have been far from you, those running, God, those that have no idea why they're even in this church today, would they realize it's because you're speaking to them. Jesus said in John 6 that no one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws them. God, would you draw your lost kids home right now? Would you just say, come home? We've been waiting. We've got a spot at the table reserved for you. Just come home. No, you don't deserve it. None of us do. But you're still welcomed. Father, I pray right now that you would bind the spirit that blinds minds in Jesus' name. 2 Corinthians 4:4. That the God of this age